This video is brought to you by Squarespace, an all-in-one platform for building your brand and growing your business online. I want to quickly give a disclaimer here about what the purpose of this video is about, given the sort of comments I received on my last video, which I still stand by. I just think that sometimes people can feel the impulse to comment right at the beginning of a video or just from reading the thumbnail, and so they're not yet getting the full understanding of what I'm trying to say, and it's difficult because I also depend on early comments to push my video forward in the algorithm, so I am thankful for the excitement, but because this topic is also a bit controversial, I want to get some things off my chest immediately in case people don't want to stick around for the whole thing. This video is about the current media landscape through the lens of celebrity journalism. And I chose this topic because I think it's a fascinating medium that I also enjoy. Like, I love Hot Ones, I love Actors on Actors, Brittany Broski's Royal Court, Las Culturistas, Vogue's in the Bag, etc., which I know they're all very different and are trying to achieve different things, but they also all follow into this new media, social media optimized landscape that is quite the departure from old school Barbara Walters style, Oprah style journalism. And I've seen people discourse about this and point fingers at influencers for turning journalism into content, but I think the topic is much more complex than that, and it's something that I try to explain the nuances of in this video, whether I'm successful or not. I'm also biased because I am one of those influencers turning journalism into content, so the call is coming from inside the house. All is to say, even though I talk about certain podcasts and shows as examples, I think it's just much more fruitful to talk about what's going on situationally rather than, focus all of our blame on like one Alex Cooper interview. So with that said, I'm excited to get started. If you've noticed, I've changed my backdrop. I feel like I've been changing my backdrop for every single video now because I haven't figured out where my house is the perfect spot to film. Also because it's still a work in progress with decor. So we're still trying to figure that out. Sorry. Anyways, let's get started. In March, earlier this year, podcast host Alex Cooper interviewed singer-songwriter Chappell Roan on one of the top podcasts in America, Call Her Daddy. Just some context. Call Her Daddy started out as a relationship advice podcast in 2018, originally hosted by Alex Cooper and Sophia Franklin. In late 2020, Franklin left the podcast, leaving Cooper to run the show solo. Then in 2021, Cooper struck a $60 million deal with Spotify, and in 2024, she struck a $125 million deal with SiriusXM. Since Franklin left, Cooper started onboarding celebrities to interview, which makes sense because it is harder to run a podcast as a solo speaker. And business-wise, I think it's a smart decision to pull in fans of those celebrities to watch your show. As a rising star, Chappell Roan hasn't been interviewed too much at length, and at the time of her interview with Call Her Daddy, fans were fiending to know more about her.
Chappell Roan, welcome to Call Her Daddy.
Thank you.
Within the first 2 minutes of the interview, Cooper compliments Roan's outfit by saying,
"It literally looks like you are the host of the show. And I'm not,
No.
You look like you are running this room right now and I'm the outsider."
This self-deprecation seeds authority and is something that Cooper does a lot in her interviews. She's always looking to build camaraderie. And so her questions often start off with compliments.
"You know what you're doing, Avril. Okay." I look up to what you guys have done.
Thank you.
No, I love it.
But what that usually also means is that she ends up affirming the ideals and feelings of her guests rather than, asking for more information. Cooper also projects the idea that she isn't necessarily smarter than her interviewees. For example, when Roan answers what her favorite outfit is, Cooper replies, "Okay, well, I was going to say now I need to go Google that." Cooper wants to make her guests feel like they're on the same level as her, which is fine when done tactfully, but can also rob an interview of substance. For example, early on, Cooper asked Roan if she dresses up all the time, and Roan talks about how she actually is pretty casual in her day-to-day life, and that she feels she can dress more mask in LA because no one cares, but if she's in other parts of America, she dresses more femme, so she doesn't have to deal with the looks and whatnot. Listening to her speak, it's obvious to me that her sexuality is an important factor for how she dresses, but Cooper, who is a straight woman, steamrolls over that point to instead draw a connection between the two of them by saying she also has days where she doesn't want to get dressed for everyone else. Later on in the interview, there was a greater missed opportunity, in my opinion, because around this time, Chappell Roan was getting lambasted online for making a TikTok statement about how she didn't want to get approached in public.
I don't give a f- if you think it's selfish of me to say no for a photo.
And people took it to mean that she was ungrateful for her fans. I didn't agree with that, but whatever.
I'm allowed to say no to creepy behavior.
In the interview, Roan clarified to Cooper that she actually loves her fans, but she doesn't love inappropriate behavior, and mentions a time when someone approached her while she was in mid-fight with her girlfriend. Cooper affirms her after her explanation simply with,
I fucking love you.
and I just think this was a missed opportunity to go deeper on what that experience was really like for Roan, you know, to feel unsafe or to feel like an object. And what was that trigger? Like, what was going on in her head at the time that she felt the only way to advocate for herself was to record and upload this video onto TikTok? Or honestly, what her views are on using TikTok as a celebrity now. And then it'd be interesting for her to talk about how it really felt to see the press turn against her day after day, despite initially supporting her rise to fame. Literally anything else other than just being like, yeah, cool. I actually had the idea for this video because I came across Tobias Hess's Substack article, Why Are All Pop Star Interviews Like That? Hess mentions Call Her Daddy, but also names podcasts, therapists, Les Culturistas, and Zane Lowe as examples of the same phenomenon. He writes, what unites all of these pieces of media is a giddy sensibility where the host has the effect and enthusiasm of a superfan. The pop star, in turn, acts bashful and pleased and at least appears to model a sense of safety and comfort, which in turn makes the viewer feel as if they're part of this intimate gabfest with their fave. To give Alex Cooper credit, it's not always just vibes. She does have moments of profoundness. Around the 36-minute mark, she asks Rowan about her identity as Chappell versus Kaylee, and she goes on like a really well-spoken monologue about the pressures of fame and being a woman. I think Cooper is very smart. I think the people helping her write her interview questions are also very smart, but ultimately, she has to play the game, and in this day and age, entertainment is more important than serious journalism. And that's why after this statement, Cooper goes, I want to play a little game. And then, we get into the game segment of the podcast. Do I think that Call Her Daddy should get canceled? No. I mean, I don't know. I don't listen to it regularly, but I think that the frustration that some people have towards podcasts like Call Her Daddy is because the alternative, the serious journalism side, is shrinking. This combined with the fact that the journalism industry is contracting, young people increasingly use social media for news and are losing literacy skills, and the overall infiltration of generative AI to write articles, it's making journalism seem very bleak. Today, I want to talk specifically about the celebrity interview, how it's declined as a medium, and the importance of maintaining it.
I'm Barbara Waters. So glad you're with us.
Call Her Daddy.
Welcome to Therapod.
Good to see you again in this chicken shop.
You're watching Hominids.
Over here.
May she rest in peace.
I'm using Squarespace right now as a homepage for my book club, which you should totally join. Our next pick is going up October 1st, and it's going to be a spooky one. I personally love how easy Squarespace's design tools are. They have tons of customization options, like a stacked font library and color choices for every single little thing on the website. Squarespace also offers so many different analytical tools as well. So the website is giving a party in the front, but we also got business in the back with your analytic dashboard. It's of course super useful if you're trying to grow your business because you can see how engaged people are with your site. If you are your business, Squarespace also offers professional portfolio designs where you can display projects in customizable galleries and add password-protected pages to share private work with your clients. I'm actually using a gallery page to display all the books I've chosen for the club, so the options are endless. Check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Minalay to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Helen Peterson wrote a piece on celebrity journalism for Believer magazine in 2014 that charts the history of the craft. She brings it back to historian Charles Ponce de Leon, who dates the emergence of personality journalism to the emergence of the public sphere in general in the late 18th century, a new era when any man could become a known public figure. He didn't need to be an aristocrat anymore. He could be a writer, a politician, an actor, anyone who had public visibility.
We're famous. We're celebrities.
But with this new public visibility, there came anxiety to manage it. Peterson explains that this management of the public self led to a growing skepticism among the general public towards public figures. She writes, as public personalities became increasingly aware of the importance of image and of their performance thereof, the public naturally developed a consciousness of and wariness about that performance. A public speech, a photo op, a self-penned editorial, they were compelling. They made the subject seem amiable or eloquent or stately, but they were also highly calculated. Even a layperson knew this. The personality or celebrity profile arose as a way to create a more authentic narrative about the public figure. It hasn't been a perfect medium, and there's always been an element of control from the publicists and an underlying message of self-promotion for the star and their upcoming projects. But for the most part, it was a balanced act between the press and the studios. The press was the only mouthpiece for the celebrity to speak to the public and therefore a necessary tool for marketing. In the second half of the 20th century, the power of the press grew enormously, and this is because the studio system unraveled over the course of the 1950s.
Now the world's changing out there. There's a lot of new, exciting ideas running around.
Under the studio system, stars were contracted by the likes of MGM, Paramount, RKO, etc. And so it was the studio's responsibility to work with the press and create an ultimately flattering profile of their stars. If the press didn't play by their rules, the studio could blacklist them from access to the rest of their roster. Say if you publish something crazy about Greta Garbo, say goodbye to your scheduled meeting with Jimmy Stewart. It just wasn't worth the risk for publications. But once the studio system dismantled, the good side was that the stars were free from their exploitative contracts, but the bad side was that they were also left to fend for themselves in the press. They had to acquire their own agents, their own lawyers, their own publicists. And as Peterson explains, but even a powerful agent was somewhat powerless against a publication such as Scandal Rag Confidential, with seemingly nothing to lose. Even the formidable Henry Wilson, the man behind Rock Hudson, Tab Hunter, and a slew of similarly beefcaked male stars, couldn't entirely shield his clients. When Confidential publisher Robert Harrison obtained evidence of Hudson's homosexuality, Wilson was able to kill the story only by sacrificing the reputation of another of his clients, Rory Calhoun, who had covered up his past as a juvenile delinquent. In these scenarios, it's obviously not good what the press was doing. Confidential was much more tabloid than journalism, but this kind of entitlement towards a person's private life bled into celebrity journalism as well. Barbara Walters famously grilled her interviewees for years.
Are you a good mother?
Yes, I'm an excellent mother.
Ever do drugs in front of your child?
My God, what a question.
She was able to do so because her interviews were incredibly popular. Her Monica Lewinsky feature reached an estimated 70 million viewers. She also established herself as like a real journalist, interviewing the likes of Vladimir Putin and Fidel Castro along with her regular celebrity roster. She even got Richard Nixon to admit that he probably should have burned the tapes.
Are you sorry you didn't burn the tapes?
Everybody in Europe that I talked to said, why didn't you burn the tapes? And the answer is, I probably should have.
So also to say, I think like her reputation put her in a place where she was able to be the kind of hard-hitting journalist that she was. Walters also had a gift for making celebrity journalism into news. She was unafraid, to ask questions that everyone wanted to know but felt they couldn't ask. Of course, it was a double-edged sword, as her interviews sometimes teetered on the side of sadism. In her 2000 interview with Ricky Martin, she asked about the rumors on his sexuality. He explained that
sexuality is something that each individual should deal with in their own way. And that's all I have to say about that.
Well, you could stop these rumors. You could say, as many artists have, yes, I am gay. Or you could say, no, I'm not. I don't want to put you on the spot, but but it's in
perfectly.
your
No, and
it's in your power to
thank
do
you so
it.
much for
And I'm
doing
bringing it up, Ricky, because you know
I know.
that this
I
is being
understand,
said,
and thank you so
and you're even
much.
being named.
Martin has later commented on the interview saying, "It's horrible. I felt that she was knocking like punch after punch after punch. It was really uncomfortable, to be honest." Walters apparently did regret this interview, but this was not the first or last instance where she showed little empathy for her interviewees, especially when those interviewees were women. She condescendingly asked Katharine Hepburn why she didn't wear skirts, asked Barbara Streisand why she didn't get her nose fixed, and asked Taylor Swift, "How are you going to find somebody?" The 90s and 2000s were an especially dark time for celebrity journalism, in my opinion, because of just the rampant misogyny permeating the media. Diane Sawyer, who was another hard-hitting interviewer and noted rival of Barbara Walters, famously interviewed 21-year-old Britney Spears in 2003. Sawyer grilled her over her sex life, her stage kiss with Madonna, among other topics where she took the most bad faith interpretation possible. And Britney made an Instagram post 20 years later saying that she felt she was exploited and set up by this interview.
It's one thing not to want to be the role model anymore. It's another thing not to know that a lot of young girls are looking at this.
But am I responsible for them?
Around the same time, Justin Timberlake went on the Star and Buck Wild morning show where he bragged about sleeping with Britney to laughter and applause.
And I just want to ask you one question. Did you Britney Spears? Yes or no?
Oh, man.
Come on, man.
Okay, I did it. No,
Jessica M. Goldstein characterizes the 2000s as a combination of you go girl empowerment with young women garnering massive success in the entertainment industry, ignorance around phenomena like victim blaming and slut shaming, and a lack of legislation against revenge porn and invasive paparazzi techniques. This wombo combo led to an ecosystem that offered little opportunity or vocabulary to fight back against the misogyny of the press.
A solo reading of a lyric. Or two. I just want to touch you, tease you, you, please you, love you, hold you, make love to you. I'm going to kiss you, 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 feel you. Read these to your mom?
Of course not.
I think the media should feel rightfully ashamed about this climate, and we don't need another person like Barbara Walters bullying young women, you know? But I also think that this shame is why some people, especially the young people who grew up in the 2000s like me, and who are now going on to host podcast shows, why they may feel the need to overcorrect and coddle their interviewees instead. It's also become more complicated as the power of the press has declined over the years overall, with just less and less people paying attention to traditional media, opting for influencer-driven content instead. And the problem with influencer-driven content is that other than the lack of editorial board and readily available resources that a legacy company comes with, influencers are personalities themselves. Most influencer podcasts only exist because the influencer's team denotes this as a proper career move for them to like build on their existing platforms. It's not like an inherent love of journalism. And this wouldn't be a problem if not for the fact that it's harder to get a podcast deal if you're just a journalist with no following, thus leading to this pollution of softball celebrity journalism. And even if you are an influencer with a podcast deal, you have to court your initial interviewees to come onto a show without proven success. No publicist is going to advise their client to go onto a show with low viewership to potentially get grilled on. But then by the time you have a successful podcast, like say Therapist, you've already shaped the structure of your interviews, and it would be a risk to your existing fan base to make it more like Barbara Walters style. Alex Cooper pivoted to more straight up journalism when she invited Kamala Harris onto Call Her Daddy before the election, and she received a lot of backlash for it. She defended her decision, saying, "Listen, I knew it was going to come. I'm very aware that my audience is very split, and I again take that with responsibility. I don't want to alienate people, but I did feel like I had a sense of responsibility." But again, Alex Cooper's net worth is in the multi-millions, so maybe she feels she can stand to lose some listeners. Not everyone is so lucky. But there's another conflict of interest. If the interviewer thinks that the person they're interviewing can accelerate their career. For example, Jake Shane is starting to get acting gigs according to Deadline, and if he wants to do more of them, it wouldn't really make sense for him to make enemies with an actor he brings onto his show, especially a more established one who could say to a producer, I can't work with Jake, get him off the movie.
Deborah, quick, what's your lip combo?
Tina Fey alluded to similar problems that Bowen Yang would run into if he kept being as candid about his opinions on movies while launching an acting career.
I don't think so, honey. Bowen Yang giving his real opinions about movies on this podcast. I regret to inform you that you are too famous now, sir.
In entertainment, nepotism and connections are everything. I mean, I would say every industry is like this, but for the context, entertainment, right? And now, especially in the age of social media, jobs are no longer fixed. You don't have to just be a podcaster. You can also be an actor. But this climate is antithetical to the responsibility of the press, where writers shouldn't write as friends of their subjects. The writer's job is to serve as a proxy for the reader. And this might seem arbitrary, but it actually has larger cultural ramifications. New York Magazine's 2018 interview with Soon-Yi Previn, Woody Allen's wife, was conducted by Daphne Merkin, who'd been friends with Woody Allen for over 40 years. The whole article is not great, but to give you a sense of it, one of the ways that Merkin glorifies Woody and Previn's relationship is by putting down Mia Farrow, who notably alleged that Woody sexually abused their daughter Dylan. Merkin writes, according to friends of Soon-Yi's, whose kids have gone to school with hers, she was a hands-on mother, intent on taking her girls to museums, Broadway shows, the movies, places she says she'd never once gone with Farrow. Soon-Yi's job was raising these children, being there for Woody, running the house, says Lorinda Ash, who met Soon-Yi when they worked at Gagosian. She made sure they got the best tennis lessons, piano, guitar, ballet classes, whatever. She was always researching and asking advice. At the same time, she insisted that they practice and do their homework. Their life was very structured. The subtext here, which is not even subtext because of the direct dig at Farrow, is that Farrow is not as good of a mother, something that is totally unnecessary to even bring up in a piece about Soon-Yi Previn, but serves to add an overall positive narrative for Woody Allen by pitching him as creating this great home life for his kids, and through that encourages the readers to question the validity of Farrow's claims. But to go back to the networking conflict of interest element, this is a consequence of a hyper-capitalist culture where everyone is expected to do as many careers as possible. It's not enough to just be one thing. You need to be a pop star. You need to be an actor. You need to be a producer. You need to sell bath soap. You also need to launch a podcast, start a beauty company, and create a book club. I don't blame anyone for subscribing to the mindset. I absolutely do it too, especially because in content creation, money is never guaranteed. Videos can drop off and sponsorships can go dry. So if you want to join my book club, it's called Highbrow. And if you want to cast me, yes, I will put myself on tape. But now there's this problem where everyone wants to be a celebrity or friend of a celebrity and no one wants to be the press. And who can blame them when the press industry is collapsing and when journalists are more undervalued than ever? Last year, singer-songwriter Tyla appeared on popular radio show The Breakfast Club, and she declined to answer a question about her identity in South Africa. She actually turned to look at her publicist to answer for her.
Can we not? Por favor.
Charlemagne the God, who co-hosts Breakfast Club, later explained the situation.
Labels always will come and say, hey, can you not ask this? Can you not ask that? Sometimes, depending on what it is, like if it's something like really personal, really serious, something I know is traumatizing, I'll be like, sure, I'll oblige. For this one, I said no. They had 6 things they didn't want us to ask. I say no, I'm not going to oblige any of this. It is your job then, label, management, whoever, to either prepare the artist for the questions or pull the interview.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm fine with either or.
I understand hesitance from celebrities to answer controversial questions. Social media has made it so there's a living record of literally everything you've ever said. There's also pressure that someone can easily misconstrue your words or create a soundbite that twists your words out of context.
All of my friends who have kids are in hell.
Your words also have much more immediate consequences because people can comment and stitch and make reaction videos to literally whatever you've said for weeks or even months or even years. A joke you made years ago could come back to haunt you, as with Io Adebari, who had to apologize to Jennifer Lopez over comments she made about her on a podcast in 2020 because the two of them ended up on the same episode of SNL in 2024. This has ultimately led to a major media-trained environment where stars will purposely make themselves into bland caricatures in order to avoid any controversy whatsoever. And I think this is also why whenever a celebrity, does step out of line, it draws a lot of attention and virality, oftentimes less because of what they actually said and more because they went mask off when we didn't expect it. For a person like Charlemagne, who is very successful with a show that has been inducted in the Radio Hall of Fame, he is in a place where he can push back against publicists.
I like when they talk from the back and say we can't. I like that.
He also started his career before the social media schmoozing culture, so I think he is really holding on to the ethics of old school journalism, though he can only do so much. As we saw with Tyla, some teams would rather look uncooperative on the show rather than have their talent speak. I think as the mainstream media landscape becomes more and more uncritical, this kind of publicist editorial oversight becomes just more and more normal. I've already made a video unpacking criticism in today's world. Check it out if you would like. But in sum, there's just not a lot of respect for critics anymore. Artists often angrily clap back at critics on social media, regardless of whether or not that critic has something valuable to say.
Used to think about strangling me.
In Tobias Hess's article, he mentions Halsey's response to a negative Pitchfork review in which she cherry-picked quotes and wrote the caption, "I think it's so beautiful that everyone interprets things differently." Every artist has a right to respond towards criticism, but I think the popular choice to shut down or memify criticism rather than genuinely engage and disagree leads to the kind of culture where criticism and the press as a whole is devalued. And when the press is devalued, it ultimately gets shut down. In early 2024, Condé Nast announced that they were absorbing Pitchfork into GQ magazine, and many people rightfully felt this move could end up diluting the sharp and critical voice long associated with Pitchfork.
Is this the sign of the death of music reviews?
Yancey Strickler wrote about it on Substack, saying, "It was once critics who helped shape cultural values, spotting a trend here, putting a scene on the map there, but now the process is driven by metrics. Now art and culture have been safely neutralized as interchangeable commercial objects, just like everything else." Who was it that criticized selling out in the first place? The critic, of course. The decline of the critic mirrors the decline of the mediums they cover. We talk about how a lot of studio movies aren't good anymore because these major studios are more focused on making profit and lazily using IP rather than investing in interesting creative projects. Yet the media landscape isn't encouraging the public to be interested in creativity either. Recently in July, The Times reassigned 4 of its art critics to other roles. Sia Mitchell, the culture editor, cited an effort to expand beyond the traditional review and has cited the need to incorporate new mediums like essays, new story forms, videos, and experimentation with other platforms. Look, I think you can absolutely produce great critical pieces through any of these other mediums. I'm on YouTube, obviously, but I am wary of the decline of long-form writing and the trappings of social media optimized content, which is usually just that, content. I was talking to this actress at a party recently who was complaining to me about how she had to make TikTok videos to help promote the show she was on. And it was just silly dances, just meaningless trends, which in some cases can be natural and funny and contribute to fanfare, but when pushed out by a studio or corporation, can feel soulless and lacking in substance. Yet this short-form content is the kind of promotional content that goes viral, so studios will keep trying to make their actors participate in it. The number of views Daisy Edgar-Jones, Glenn Powell, and Anthony Ramos got on their Apple Dance video outperformed the number of views they got for saying literally anything about their movie Twisters. Again, there is space for this kind of promotional content, but without real criticism, people will not discover the kind of changes they might be wanting, and studios will continue to profit off of that ignorance and lack of demand. Richard Brody explains this perfectly for The New Yorker. What's lost in such diluted coverage is proper assessment of the basic cultural unit. Arts coverage risks becoming a spectacle unto itself, the creative vitality of individual voices replaced by a smorgasbord of packaged samples. There's also a relatively new genre of celebrity journalism that Brody touches on, the kind of promotional content that is created by artists themselves or by any other parties with vested interests. John Caramonica lists off some examples in his 2018 feature, RIP, The Celebrity Profile, for the New York Times. In Elle, Jennifer Lawrence interviewed Emma Stone. Blake Lively conducted Gigi Hadid's Harper's Bazaar May cover interview. Katy Perry's March Glamour cover interview was by the Instagram affirmation specialist Cleo Wade. Interview, a magazine predicated on these sorts of intra-celebrity conversations, was recently resurrected. In the comeback issue, Raf Simons talks with George Condo, a journalist chimes in occasionally, and Jennifer Jason Leigh talks to Phoebe Cates. I think a lot of these conversations can be interesting. Like, people memify actors on actors all the time.
The one where you played the camel? The Humps of My Heart. What an amazing film that was.
But it is cool to see two artists talking about art. In terms of press tours, I think it's one of the better marketing moves because as an audience, we're actually learning something. And as artists, they can actually talk about things they're passionate about rather than having to answer rapid fire questions about what their favorite Taylor Swift song is on the red carpet.
What's your favorite Taylor Swift song? Girl, what the hell?
I'd argue the difference between actors and actors and a celebrity profile and why the first can't fill the void left by the latter is that the latter, a celebrity profile, is personality journalism. Meaning that it's supposed to dive deep into a person's character and life rather than just talking about the things that they do for work. Because of this emphasis on a person's life, I think it's easy for some people to brush off celebrity journalism as being frivolous and unimportant, but walk with me here, it's actually very important. Victoria Sands writes in her article, "There will be no further explanation. Celebrity news can provide a conduit to the discussion, negotiation, and understanding of socio-political issues, giving it both social and market value, and indeed might promote greater media transparency through its capacity to interrogate carefully constructed messaging of a privileged class." My co-writer Am and I just had a long discussion the other day about Sabrina Carpenter and her album cover, and we realized that we weren't even really talking about Sabrina. She was just a vehicle in which to discuss the state of feminism, artist responsibility, and discourse culture on the internet. As a more concrete example, The New Yorker recently published an unflattering profile of Patti LuPone, where her comments towards Audra McDonald and Keisha Lewis sparked major outrage. While Patti was definitely criticized in the aftermath for her behavior, ultimately, I think the discussions were less about her and more about the racial microaggressions present in the theater community, as well as prompting us to take a hard look at the way we platform Broadway stars and where we draw the line between someone being a diva and someone just being a bully.
There's such a difference between having a confrontational, bold, audacious, diva-like personality and using that as justification to be racist, rude, mean, and entitled and snobby.
Victoria Sands also raises a point about how modern journalism owes its genesis to the intent of the working class on cultivating a form of mass communication to elevate their voices, thus creating a press of their own outside the elite. Celebrity coverage thus offers an opportunity to critique the wealthy elite. Therefore, it's interesting that these days, it seems like both the interviewer and the interviewee are part of that privileged class. I've watched a few episodes of Call Her Daddy for research, and there were a number of times when I wished Alex Cooper would have challenged her guests, like what her guests were saying. But then I was also thinking about how when you're wealthy and surrounded by wealthy people all the time, it's harder for you to discern when something is tone deaf.
Are you still using your dad's credit card?
The black card hates to see me coming.
It's nice that it's not a sugar daddy. Like, this is your actual dad. This is
it's the sugar daddy minus the sugar.
Or when something doesn't apply to the majority of your listeners.
Anyone that comments being like, this girl sucks, blah, 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 it's not a flex, you're poor.
But again, Call Her Daddy, Therapists, etc., these podcast shows are not meant to be hard-hitting journalism. They're actually meant to be aspirational in some ways. As Tobias Hess notes, Jake Shane is able to scratch the ultimate itch for our parasocial culture, to be strikingly vulnerable and open about your struggles while still in proximity to and beloved by our culture's coolest.
Been working out a lot with my friend Jake Shane. I love Jake Shane.
I would say that for a lot of people, the appeal is less on actually learning anything about the celebrity getting interviewed and more about the fantasy of being able to chat informally with them. And to be fair, I think that because we've all been aware of the PR mitigated press in the past 10 years or so, we are naturally skeptical towards any long form interview where the interviewee has the chance to come up with carefully constructed answers, or the team has the chance. A casual chat seems less planned in comparison, even though it is still manufactured. Ultimately, we are still looking for authenticity, but authenticity looks different in the social media age. I think this desire for authenticity is why shows like Amelia de Moldenberg's Chicken Shop Date, Hot Ones, and Watch What Happens Live are especially popular because, they put guests in awkward, unexpected situations, which would simulate more natural reactions.
What's the scenario?
You've just found out some really, really sad news that you've been dumped.
As Lewis Staples explains for Harper's Bazaar, many fans enjoy watching celebrities sobbing in pain after eating spicy wings on Hot Ones because spaces like that feel more real, at least until they become too big or too slick. For Hot Ones in particular, the host Sean Evans also participates in the hot wing eating, and I think watching these two people undergo a somewhat ritualistic, cathartic performance produces a kind of intimacy that we even feel as a viewer.
We gotta do it together.
I feel so safe with you. My mouth is completely numb, and I've made a new friend that I hope stays in my life for a long time.
So I thought I'd wrap up this video with a few examples of really good celebrity interviews, just because I think that it's easy to say that we're missing something, but harder to say exactly what it is that we're missing. I think most people can agree that Oprah is a fantastic interviewer.
Do you think you took a public bullet for something that wasn't really your fault? You do?
Yeah. The magic of Oprah's interviews is that she treats everyone like a normal human being, probably because she started her career talking to normal people. And in that, she recognizes that humans are inherently flawed, and she therefore probes at those flaws less in a judgmental, surprised way that's like, how can you be like this? And more in a sincere, curious, like, what compelled you to act like this way? She's always looking for explanations.
You didn't feel guilty?
No, I didn't feel guilty at the time.
Did you ever feel remorse for it?
Oprah was also able to create emotional intimacy between viewers and the interviewees organically through asking them the right questions to reveal who they were, almost like a therapist, rather than by gabbing like a bestie and manufacturing games. Los Angeles Times television critic Mary McNamara explained, the only thing Oprah was interested in was what made you feel, what made you cry, what you were scared of, what you were proud of. She was interviewing people as if she was talking to a child, getting to the bare emotional core. Oprah also does this thing where if she doesn't get the full answer to a question she asked, she somehow manages to ask it again, in other words, later on. For example, in her interview with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, early on, Meghan mentions that their son Archie will not be given his birthright prince title. Oprah asks what the reasoning is, and Meghan keeps insisting that she doesn't know because she wasn't told.
There's no explanation.
They chat for about 4 or so more minutes, mostly about the logistics of having the title and why Meghan feels it's important. And at first, Meghan says it's just the security that title would give her son. But then as they unpack it more, it becomes clear that it's also because she's offended that they're trying to take away something from him that's guaranteed to all of Charles III's other grandchildren. And then Oprah asked the question again, but rephrased to mean what Meghan thinks is the reason why Archie wasn't given the title.
You certainly must have had some conversations with Harry about it and have your own suspicions as to why they didn't want to make Archie a prince.
And then that segues into the topic of race, which was one of the highlights of the entire interview. And I think this was done masterfully because if race was hard launched as a topic from the beginning, a lot of conservatives would have turned off the program or claimed that Meghan Markle was being overly dramatic and not everything is about race, yada, yada. I mean, I'm sure some people still did, but I think that the way this interview flowed, it really set up the context for this discussion to be properly received by someone who may be living under a rock on race issues.
Do you think it's because of his race? And I know that's a loaded question, but
I can give you an honest answer.
With that said, Oprah is a friend of Harry and Meghan. She was at their wedding, and she confirms this right from the beginning. But I think because she's a trained journalist and very secure in her own profession, she doesn't lose sight of what the interview is about. Of course, there are natural biases, and she never really pushes Meghan throughout the interview, but I think this just sort of reaffirms what I've been trying to say, which is that a healthy press ecosystem is able to spotlight a variety of different approaches. Oprah is a great person to speak with when you have a tricky or controversial topic you want to share with the world. She'll make it into an entertaining conversation, and she will dig for more depth when someone is being reticent. I also think that the nature of a video interview lends itself to a more empathetic approach approach. And that's why written criticism is still really important, because the writer is able to have total freedom to jot down their own thoughts and impressions from the moment they sit down with their interviewees without having to worry about what the interviewee will say until the piece goes public. As an example of excellent written media, Michael Schulman's Jeremy Strong profile in The New Yorker was fantastic and so compelling. I love Jeremy Strong.
Oh, come on, man. F off.
I think he's one of today's greatest actors, and in the future, Schulman kind of makes fun of him and the lengths he will go for a strong, pun intended, performance. For example, Schulman writes, while shooting the 1968 protest scenes, Strong asks a stunt coordinator to rough him up. He also requested to be sprayed with real tear gas. I don't like saying no to Jeremy, Aaron Sorkin told me, but there were 200 people in that scene and another 70 on the crew. So I declined to spray them with poison gas. I think to anyone who already doesn't like Jeremy Strong, this profile would add fuel to the fire, solidifying this idea that he's self-important and kind of ridiculous. But I personally found Strong to be quite endearing after reading. Like, he's exactly the type of impassioned actor who I like to see becoming successful. He's someone who isn't afraid to try really hard, and even if it ends up with him fracturing his foot because he's running in Tom Ford dress shoes to create the reality of being sweaty and breathless during each take of a scene. Schulman also points a few times to the Lucky Charms that Strong religiously carries around, which I think goes to show implicitly Strong's gratitude towards life and the opportunities he's been given, something that many A-list actors take for granted. The Hollywood Reporter commended the interview, writing, "This is a nuanced, multi-sided portrait of an extremely dedicated actor. It has inspired a range of reactions from people, including many who say they are even more impressed by Jeremy Strong's artistry after having read the article." I was very lucky. I was lucky enough to see Jeremy Strong live in the Broadway play Enemy of the People last year, and he blew me away. There's a scene where he literally gets like pummeled with ice and people pour all this beer on him, and he spends like the last several minutes of the play sopping wet and definitely uncomfortable. And, you know, as I was watching, I was thinking in the back of my head, he's doing this 8 times a week. And he was very committed. And that was like actually the second show of the day. I mean, I think there's a fine line, obviously, between abusing your body and dedicating yourself to the craft, but I can respect his testament to relaying truth through his art. Strong was upset about the profile, though, calling it his 15 minutes of shame with a long tail. I hadn't felt judged like that in a long time. He also seemed sad by the comments his coworkers said about him in the article, and I can understand that. I think it's hurtful to read what some of your peers think of you. Though I also thought there was a lot of underlying respect for Strong within all the statements they made. Regardless, I appreciate that he actually took time to articulate why the profile bothered him rather than try to clap back in a tweet. And then on top of that, he did it through another interview with GQ, so it's clear he's a somewhat amicable relationship with the press. Aside from my personal love of Jeremy Strong, I think the best kind of profile can conjure all these sorts of mixed messages, mixed feelings, because it really captures the nuances and confusion that characterizes a normal human being. We all have things that we can like or dislike about the people in our lives, and so I love when that courtesy can extend in an interview too. Ultimately, the interview is supposed to be a medium for understanding and discussion, and I hope that we continue to platform the journalists who are committed to that work. Once again, I think content is fine. I love fan service as much as the next person. I love that it can arouse mainstream fervor for the arts. I love to laugh. I love to see Glenn Powell doing a stupid little dance. But, you know, I also want to read about the PR stunt he did with Sydney Sweeney, how that even came about, and his unconventional path to being a leading man in Hollywood, because I know he's been working for a really long time, and it's just been the last couple years or so that he's really blown up. In general, I think all these things have a place in a healthy media ecosystem, and we just have to push for them. Okay, that's all I have to say for today. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble. I have a Substack, as I said. I'm trying to be better at like promoting my things, because, you know, a girl cannot just depend on YouTube forever for her paycheck, though she will try her darned hardest for as long as she can. And yeah, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. I don't even know if I said, the heat is so hot that my camera literally turned off like mid recording this video because it was too hot. So I'm so sorry for everything. for everything. Just for everything, yeah. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Bye.